Hello, third graders. This is Unit 5, Light and Sound, and this is Lesson 2. And we're learning about reflection and mirrors. Some vocabulary you will hear throughout this lesson: absorbed, soaked up, added, placed, or taken into something. Angle is a noun, it's a thing. It's a slant, the space or shape formed when two lines or two surfaces meet in one place, the corner of something with straight sides, an angle. We've talked about angles in shapes. Concave is an adjective. It describes something. It means curving inward, shaped like the inside of a bowl. Convex is also an adjective. It's the opposite of concave. It's rounded or curving outward, shaped like the outside of a bowl. Mirror is a noun, it's a thing. A smooth, polished surface like glass coated with aluminum or silver that reflects an image of whatever is in front of it. Plane is an adjective. Plane is an adjective. It describes something. It means flat or level. Reflected is a verb. It's something that happens. It's bounced back off a smooth surface. The image of the clouds in the sky was reflected off the smooth, still water of the pond. Transmitted is a verb. Sent, passed along, or spread through a material. Okay, let's see what you remember from last time. I am an extraordinary kind of energy, and I travel as tiny waves. I am very fast, but you cannot see me moving. What am I? Light. I am a source of light. Light energy starts with me. Light waves move out from me and illuminate the area around me. Am I a shiny table, a silver watch, or the sun? I'm the sun. Am I the moon, a light bulb, or a mirror? A light bulb, right? A light bulb has light coming out of it, whereas the moon and a mirror only reflect light. I am formed in places where all of the light doesn't reach. Sometimes I am very dark, and sometimes only a little bit darker than what's around me. Sometimes I take a shape similar to something nearby. What am I? A shadow. I begin at a light source and travel through the air. Sometimes you can see me and sometimes you can't. I show the way light travels in a straight line. What am I? A ray. I am one of the characters in the story, and I am especially knowledgeable about light. I love to paint, and I always notice the qualities of the light and shadows. I am slowly losing my vision or sense of sight. Who am I? That's right, it was Samuel. And our other main character is Jack, right? So stories have main characters and secondary characters. So right now we've only really met our two main characters and their dog. But there's going to be some secondary characters that are added in the next few lessons. So main characters are who the story is mainly about. Right? Think about where the story is taking place. What is the setting as we're reading it? Where is it taking place? What time of year is it? What season is it? What time of day is it? That's all part of the setting. The next morning, both men were up bright and early, each one looking forward to a day of fishing. Fishing had become one of their most cherished pastimes, and they both enjoyed fishing for striped bass. They had a favorite fishing spot on the banks of the Hudson River where Samuel arrived first. There, an old rickety or wobbly pier jutted out into the cool, lapping water. Nearby, a row of silver birch trees provided just the right amount of shade. There was also a picnic table. Alfie always accompanied them and frequently scared the fish away by jumping off the pier into the water. "Hey, you beat me to it," shouted Jack as he walked towards Samuel. Samuel was already on the pier, intently focused on attaching a large, juicy bloodworm to the hook on the end of his fishing line. I like how this illustration really helps us see what is going on. You can see from the look of their faces that Samuel looks happy to see Jack. Alfie was stretched out, enjoying the sun and the gentle breeze that was blowing across the Hudson River Valley. "Just got here myself," yelled back Samuel. "I hear the fish are jumping right onto the line." Do y'all remember why Samuel yells? That's right, because Jack doesn't have very good hearing. "Well, they'll miss your line for sure," bellowed Jack. Then he laughed loudly to himself. Samuel smiled at his friend and shook his head. "If you continue to yell like a wild boar, you'll scare away every living creature, including the fish," said Samuel. "Ah, the fish can't hear me," retorted Jack. Retorted means he said it back, or answered. For several minutes the two men were silent. Samuel finished attaching the worm to the hook on the end of his line. Then he cast his line out into the smooth, glass-like surface of the Hudson River and plonked himself down on the edge of the pier. "You know, Jack," said Samuel, "the Hudson River's 306 miles long and begins in the Adirondack Mountains in a lake called the Tears of the Clouds." "I didn't know that," replied Jack, as he too hooked the first bait and cast his line out into the water. Then, sitting down beside Samuel, Jack said, "Tell me something I don't know." Oh, I'm sorry, he did know that. For a long while, Samuel gazed out at the glistening river, his old eyes staring at the water. "Going back to what we were talking about yesterday about light waves," said Samuel, "did you know that when a light wave hits an object, three things can happen? The light can be transmitted or pass through the object. The light can also be reflected or bounced back off that object. Or the light can be absorbed or soaked up into it. This is determined by the type of object that the light waves hit. Sometimes the light does a combination of these things." Jack responded. "Take reflection, for example," continued Samuel eagerly. "Most of the light that reaches our eyes is reflected light. You see, apart from objects that produce their own light, such as the sun or a light bulb, all other objects are visible because light waves from a source bounce off them and into our eyes," explained Samuel. So you can see with this illustration, it's a good example of how light is transmitted, right? It would be transmitted through the glasses. It goes straight through the glasses. Reflected, right? It's reflected off the glass of liquid and absorbed, right? It's absorbed by the wooden box because we don't see it. The light doesn't go through it. "If you recall, Samuel Van Neumann, I did go to school. For most of the time we were in the same class," said Jack, somewhat grumpily. "I remember learning about bioluminescent creatures such as lightning bugs. If I recall correctly, they produce their own light." "Yes," exclaimed Samuel, laughing as he spoke. "It seems that as my eyes begin to fail me, I appreciate even more the things am able to see. The science of light is quite fascinating." "I'm sure it is," shouted Jack. "However, I hope you're not going to talk all day. That's why you never catch any fish, you know." So this firefly or lightning bug is bioluminescent, right? The prefix bio means its body or what it is, and it's illuminated, right? It has a light. This is a bioluminescent firefly. Say the word bioluminescent. What word part do you hear that is also in the word illuminates and in Sam Van Lumen's name? That's right, lumen, which means light, and the prefix bio means life, right? Bioluminescent means a living thing that produces its own light. Samuel smiled at Jack and continued to talk anyways. "You see, when light hits a surface, some of the light bounces off the surface. It is the light that bounces off the surface that we call reflected light. Most objects reflect some light. In fact, you are reflecting some light right now, Jack. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to see you, explained Samuel. Not that my eyes let me see a whole lot these days, he added. Jack glanced over at Alfie, who was staring at his reflection in the still water. Jack laughed and said, "Look at the way the smooth water is reflecting a perfect image of Alfie, just like a mirror." At that moment, Jack stood up to check on his line. I think I sense something not nibbling, but there's nothing there, he said. When I was young, Samuel mused, I often wondered why we're able to see our reflection in some things but not in others. Jack laughed. We wondered a lot of things when we were young. I still wonder some of those things now. Do you remember, said Samuel, when our third grade teacher, Mr. Benson, brought a mirror and a piece of wood into class to explain how light is reflected off a surface? He showed us that when the surface of an object is perfectly smooth and shiny, like that of a mirror, light rays hit all parts of the surface of that object at the same angle. Therefore, light rays reflected by that object bounce back off it at the same angle and produce a clear and accurate reflection. Jack nodded. I remember Mr. Benson well. However, Samuel continued, when the surface of an object is not perfectly smooth and shiny, like that of a piece of wood, light rays hit different parts of it at different angles. Therefore, some light rays are absorbed by that object, and some are reflected by that sort at different angles, so it does not produce a reflection. Mr. Benson was one of my favorite teachers, said Jack. Yep, he was one of my favorite teachers too, agreed Samuel. I remember him explaining that because they are so smooth, mirrors reflect almost all the light that hits them. Have you noticed that crazy dog of yours? Jack asked. He's still staring at his reflection in the smooth, shiny surface of the water. He does that, explained Samuel. Both men laughed loudly. The sound of their laughter seemed to act as a trigger for Alfie. He looked at them, wagged his tail, and then jumped headlong into the river. Don't go too far out there, Alfie, yelled Samuel, as if he was talking to a young child. The two men stood up to check their lines and then returned to their chairs. Samuel continued to keep a watchful eye on Alfie, whose head was just visible above the water. He noticed that the water was now full of ripples, making the reflection in the water wavy and distorted. Notice how the rippled part in water in this image produces a distorted or unclear image. Right? It becomes a little blurry when it's rippled. I remember that day John O'Connor brought a real old mirror into class, recalled Jack. It was his grandmother's mirror, and we couldn't see ourselves that well in it. Mr. Benson compared it to a modern mirror, the back of which was coated with a silver material. The modern mirror could reflect almost all the light that hits it. Yes, said Samuel, and Mr. Benson told us that most mirrors have flat surfaces and are called plane mirrors. So if it has a flat surface and it's a mirror, it's called a plane mirror. Mr. Benson also taught us about two other types of mirrors that have curved surfaces instead of flat surfaces, concave and convex, recalled Samuel. Oh, I remember, said Jack. We had to draw two portraits of ourselves. One portrait was a concave image and the other was a convex image. I remember that I borrowed my mother's silver spoons and brought them to school. That's right, exclaimed Samuel excitedly. That experiment was a lot of fun, Jack went on. Now let me see. Concave and convex mirrors reflect light in such a way that they alter or change the view we see in them. A concave mirror curves inward and produces a smaller, upside-down image of an object, but only if it is a certain distance away from the viewer. Yes, added Samuel, but if an object is very close to a concave mirror, its reflection will be upright and magnified. Do you remember how Mr. Benson showed us how you could put a pencil point right up into the cave of the spoon and see it upright and magnified? Jack nodded and continued. Convex mirrors curve outwards and always produce a smaller, upright image. And when you look into the convex image side of the spoon, Samuel laughed out loud. Did you actually learn something in school, Jack O'Doray? I seem to recall that you were always talking, especially when Mr. Benson was talking. Oh, I learned a thing or two, protested Jack, and I'll have you know. Suddenly Jack leapt out of his chair. Jumping jelly beans! I think I've caught a fish, he yelled. So a convex mirror bulges outward and makes it easier to see the surrounding area. Why do you think it is helpful for school buses to have convex mirrors? If they have a convex mirror, they can see the area better around them to look for kids walking or other vehicles to be safer. Almost at once, Jack began to wrestle with his fishing pole. It's a big one, Samuel, screeched Jack as he struggled to hold on to his fishing pole and not fall headfirst into the river. If you stand still, you'll stand a better chance of reeling it in, advised Samuel. Stand still, shrieked Jack as he battled with the creature on the end of the line. This fish is the size of a whale. How am I supposed to stand still? For several minutes, Jack appeared to do a dance at the end of the pier with a fishing pole. Finally, Samuel had the good sense to take a closer look at the creature that Jack was attempting to catch. Hold on a minute, Jack. Stop wrestling with that line. You've hooked Alfie by the collar. The poor dog is trying to free himself, and you keep trying to reel him in, laughed Samuel. That darn dog should be banned from coming fishing with us. He's more trouble than he's worth, roared Jack. Hold on, let me get my camera, shouted Samuel. I want to get a photograph of the day Jack O'Doray hooked himself a live Springer Spaniel. Moments later, having been unhooked by Jack, an extremely wet Alfie stood happily wagging his tail beside Jack, while Samuel busied himself taking photographs of the two of them. Get away from me, you darn dog, muttered Jack as Alfie shook himself dry. Samuel laughed aloud as he continued to capture photographic images of his two best friends. If you don't put that camera away right now, you'll be as wet as that silly dog, announced Jack. Okay, laughed Samuel. Time for lunch, I think. The two friends shared some chicken and coleslaw while Alfie lay in the sun to finish drying off. I'm glad I have my camera with me, Samuel said, between mouthfuls as he arranged the parts of his camera on the picnic blanket. Did you know that some cameras contain plain mirrors that make it possible to see the image you are about to photograph? Yeah, well, you certainly didn't need to record the image of me hooking Alfie, grumbled Jack, offering a piece of chicken to Alfie. Samuel laughed as he began to pack up the picnic basket. Well, you've obviously forgiven me. Did I tell you that we are taking Amy to the fair tomorrow? We? Exclaimed Jack. Yep, that was the deal, explained Samuel. I told her that if she made me some chocolate cake, I'd take her to the fair. Me too, shouted Jack a little less grumpily. You're going to eat some cake, aren't you? Samuel yelled back. Well, okay then, but you're going to make me go on are you going to make me go on those bumper cars again, are you? Asked Jack. No, said Samuel with a smile. This time I thought we might try the House of Mirrors. Okay, what is the setting of this part of the story? The setting is the summer in the state of New York along the Hudson River. From what point of view is this story being told? It's told in third person by a narrator. And how do we know? Well, the pronouns in the narrator section are the words he, him, his, instead of I, mine, and me, right? We know that it's not a character in the story talking, as in the narrator. You heard Samuel explain to Jack that when rays of light waves hit an object, they can be transmitted, reflected, or absorbed. What do these terms mean? When light hits an object and passes through it, it is transmitted. When light hits an object and bounces back off it, it is reflected and creates a reflection. When light hits an object and is soaked up into it, it is absorbed and a shadow is created behind the object. Why can't you see your reflection in a rough surface like a piece of wood? Well, the light rays hit different parts of the wood and many are absorbed. They do not reflect back at the same angle, so there is not a reflection. What is a mirror? A mirror is a smooth, polished surface like glass that reflects light and produces an image. You heard Samuel tell Jack that there are 3 types of mirrors: plane, convex, and concave. How would you describe each? A plane mirror is flat and accurate. A concave mirror is curved inward like a cave, and a convex mirror is curved outwards towards you. Based on the information in the story so far, why do you think Samuel wanted to visit the House of Mirrors? Well, Samuel is interested in the extraordinary science of light and the important part it plays in his art. He has already explained what causes light to reflect off smooth, shiny surfaces. By visiting the House of Mirrors, he will be able to demonstrate to Jack and the children the different ways that mirrors of various designs reflect light. So our words for today are concave and convex. In the read aloud, you heard Samuel say to Jack, "Mr. Benson always taught us about two other types of mirrors that have curved surfaces instead of flat surfaces, concave and convex." Say the words concave and convex. If you are looking at something concave, it is bent or curved inward. So think of you go inside a cave, it's the inside of a curve. If you're looking at something convex, it is rounded and curved outwards. Every morning I pour my cereal into a concave bowl. If I turn my bowl upside down, the outside that is now facing me is convex. All right, I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about light.